In the early hours of a quiet Wednesday morning, September 24th, 2025, the city of Dallas was shaken awake by gunfire. The scene was an immigration and customs enforcement facility located near Love Field Airport on North Stemmons Freeway. It was just after 6:30 a.m. when the routine of detainee transfers was shattered by the sharp crack of rifle fire. Witnesses described the sound as echoing across the concrete canyons of the industrial district, at first mistaken for construction noise, then unmistakably gunshots. On the roof of a nearby building, a lone figure positioned himself with deadly intent. He carried a high-powered bolt-action rifle, the kind designed for distance and precision. His target, the men and women inside the ICE facility, and more immediately, a transport van parked in the Sally Port where detainees were being loaded. Within seconds, chaos erupted. Bullets pierced the van, striking 3 detainees inside. One would die almost instantly. 2 others, critically injured, were rushed to nearby hospitals where doctors fought to save their lives. No ICE agents were hit, but the message was unmistakable. This was not random violence. It was a calculated strike against a government agency. As emergency calls flooded in, Dallas police and federal agents swarmed the area. Tactical units moved to flank the building where the shooter had taken his perch. But before officers could close in, the gunfire stopped. When agents finally ascended to the rooftop, they found the suspect dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The siege was over in minutes, but the questions it raised were only beginning. The gunman was quickly identified as 29-year-old Joshua Jahn, a man with ties to both North Texas and Oklahoma. He was no hardened criminal or known extremist, at least not on paper. In fact, his background painted a picture of someone unremarkable, an ordinary young man whose life had meandered through school, odd jobs, and brief arrests, with little sign he would one day open fire on a federal facility. Yet the evidence left behind told another story. Among the spent shell casings scattered near his body, investigators found bullets marked with crude inscriptions, the words "Anti-ICE" scrawled in blue ink. These were not just weapons, they were messages. FBI officials displayed photographs of the casings at a press conference, calling them proof that Jahn's actions were politically motivated. "When you have anti-ICE rhetoric written on the bullets," one agent said flatly, "you know who they're targeting." This detail stunned Jahn's family. His brother Noah told reporters, "He didn't have strong feelings about ICE as far as I knew." He described Joshua as unique, a little eccentric, but not political, not someone who expressed hatred toward law enforcement. A childhood friend from the Boy Scouts echoed that sentiment, recalling long conversations about video games and coding, not ideology. "He was actually against gun violence," the friend insisted, "so this is making it even more surprising." He was not somebody that would condone those kinds of actions. Neighbors in Fairview, where Jahn's family lived, were equally blindsided. One described the Jahns as a very sweet family, shocked to see federal agents raiding the house. Another shook his head. "You think just how crazy that is, and how close it is to home now." To them, the attack felt like an explosion without warning. But for investigators, the picture is more complicated. Records show that Jahn's life had been unsettled. He attended Collin College in McKinney, Texas, on and off between 2013 and 2018, and even took classes briefly at the University of Texas at Dallas more than a decade ago. His employment history was scattered. At one point, he worked on a legal marijuana farm in Washington state, harvesting plants in the Pacific Northwest. His only criminal charge came in 2015, when he was arrested for marijuana possession in Collin County. He pled guilty, but nothing in his record suggested violence. By the late 2000s, he had drifted north into Oklahoma, where records show he lived in Durant. He was unemployed at the time of the shooting and according to his brother, planning to move onto his parents' property in rural Oklahoma. He played video games. He tinkered with coding. He kept to himself. From the outside, his life looked ordinary, if a little directionless. But inside his car, agents found signs of a darker worldview. A strange map marked with radioactive fallout patterns and cryptic slogans referencing nuclear disasters dating back to the 1950s. Whether this was paranoia, conspiracy thinking, or simply eccentric behavior remains unclear. What is certain is that by September 2025, Joshua Jahn had armed himself, climbed a rooftop, and killed in the name of a message he never explained. Federal investigators were left piecing together his psychology. Was Jahn radicalized online? Was he nursing private grievances that suddenly boiled over? Did he act from ideological conviction or from a mental health crisis? FBI special agent in charge. Joe Rothrock called the shooting targeted violence, but admitted the motive remained murky. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem was less ambiguous. She condemned the attack as motivated by hatred for ICE and tied it to what she described as years of dangerous rhetoric against the agency. "It's just got to stop," she said firmly. "It's dangerous, and people are losing their lives." That political framing immediately ignited debate. President Donald Trump, never one to miss a chance to draw lines, declared that Jahn's actions were the direct result of radical left terrorists who had demonized ICE. The National Republican Congressional Committee issued a press release accusing Democrats of fueling violence, citing past quotes critical of ICE. One spokesperson wrote, "A deep and pervasive sickness has infected the radical left in this country, and elected Democrats' escalatory rhetoric is feeding it to them. Jahn's attack was not an isolated tragedy. It was evidence of a larger war against law enforcement, but others see a more complicated picture. Civil rights groups have long accused ICE of excessive force and harsh treatment of detainees. Video footage of agents in riot gear, smashing car windows or dragging suspects from vehicles has fueled outrage. Some US citizens, critics say, have even been detained by ICE because of their appearance. Protests outside detention centers have become flashpoints, with activists clashing with agents and accusing them of brutality. To these voices, anti-ICE sentiment is not radical extremism. It is born from real grievances. The National Lawyers Guild went so far as to accuse ICE agents of using violent tactics against peaceful protesters. In that context, Jahn's anti-ICE bullets might represent a distortion of legitimate criticism, twisted into personal violence. Still, his actions fit into a troubling trend. In July 2025, attackers in black military clothing opened fire on the Prairieland Detention Center in Alvarado, southwest of Dallas, ambushing enforcement officers. 10 people were arrested. Later that month, another man armed with an assault rifle shot at a Customs and Border Protection facility in McAllen, Texas, injuring 3 before being killed by agents. ICE officials say assaults on their officers have skyrocketed, claiming a 700% increase in recent years. Some of this may be hyperbole, but the reality is undeniable. Violent attacks on immigration enforcement have become more frequent, and this pattern is not new. America has seen a long history of violent, anti-government actions. In 1995, Timothy McVeigh bombed the Oklahoma City Federal Building, killing 168 people. He too saw himself as striking against what he believed was government tyranny. More recently, extremist violence has come from both left and right, with shooters targeting politicians, federal officers, and community leaders. Just weeks before Jahn's attack, conservative activist Charlie Kirk was assassinated by a rooftop sniper. In Nevada, a United Healthcare CEO was killed in another shooting tied to anti-government sentiment. Experts warn that the political climate, supercharged by culture wars, media outrage, and social media radicalization, is creating a perfect storm. Brian Levin of the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism predicted this very scenario earlier in the year, warning of several types of extremists emboldened by Trump and a climate of everything everywhere all at once. Where does Joshua Jahn fit into this picture? On one hand, his bullets carried a message. On the other, his family insists he wasn't political. His past shows no militancy, no activism, no online trail of extremist ideology. Friends remember him as helpful, quiet, even gentle. Yet in the end, actions speak louder. He climbed a rooftop, took aim, and pulled the trigger. Whether driven by ideology, delusion, or a breakdown we may never fully understand. He left behind a victim's family grieving, 2 others fighting for life, and a nation once again asking how rhetoric, resentment, and weapons keep colliding in tragedy. The Dallas ICE shooting has become more than a crime scene. It is a battleground for narratives. To some, it proves that law enforcement is under siege from radical activists. To others, it highlights the combustible anger produced by aggressive immigration policies. For investigators, it remains an unsolved question mark. What truly motivated Joshua Jahn? Was he a soldier in a war of ideas? Or a lost soul whose private demons found a public stage? What is undeniable is the human cost. Behind every statistic are individuals. The detainee killed was awaiting processing, caught in a system larger than himself. His life ended not in a courtroom, but in a burst of gunfire meant to send a message. The 2 survivors now carry scars, physical and emotional, that may never fade, and their families will live with the memory of that morning forever. For ICE agents, the shooting is a chilling reminder. They are not only enforcing the law, they are targets. The men and women of ICE are fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, Secretary Noem reminded Americans. Like everyone else, we just want to go home to our families at night. Her words struck at the heart of the matter. Beneath politics, beneath ideology, these are people, officers, detainees, neighbors, swept into violence none of them asked for. As the investigation continues, analysts are poring over Jahn's devices, searching for writings, posts, or connections that could illuminate his final choice. Perhaps they will find a manifesto, or perhaps only silence. Sometimes the hardest truth is that there is no clear answer, only fragments of a life, stitched together after the fact, leaving us to wonder how and why. For now, Dallas remembers that dawn not as an ordinary morning, but as a turning point. Sirens, shattered glass, bullet holes, and unanswered questions. The echoes of rifle fire fading into memory, but the consequences still unfolding. And so the story of Joshua Jahn stands as both warning and question. When grievances, conspiracies, and politics collide, how many more rooftops will become stages for violence? And what will it take to stop the next trigger pull?